Well, good day to you. It is October the 28th. I hope you're doing well out there, wherever you happen to be. My name is Gary Willing. Bienvenue if you're new, and welcome back if you have been here before. Now, if you want to know more about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, I encourage you to check out some of the links in the description portion of these videos to help with your investigation, to help you learn more about this information. And then, and only then, do I think that you can make an honest decision or choice or perceptive view if there's any truth to this information for yourself after you investigate it for yourself. That's the only way to really do it. So that's why I encourage everyone to look into those links. So, and check out those websites because they talk about this information in a lot of ways. Now, if you want, you can join the discussion by posting your comment in the comment section. You can post your question in the comment section, or you can email me directly at searchforsigns@mail.com. But Smoke Doja, Timothy Tilton, and James Wambidi were the ones that have commented since I put the video up yesterday afternoon. So thank you very much for that, because if it wasn't for you guys, I would not have anything to say in this video, and I'd have to probably wait till Monday. So I really do appreciate it. Now, I'm going to start with James Wambidi's comment, and I'm going to tie it into Timothy Tilton, and I'm actually going to tie it into the last comment that Smoke Doja was replying to my comment about. So, because they actually pertain to one another, believe it or not. So, James Wambidi said, Christianity exalts the quote-unquote blood that was shed on the cross to wash away our sins, unquote, more than the message which the Christ brought to the world. In the Catholic Church, the Virgin Mary, the Mother of God, is perceived to be even more important than the Christ himself. Who is going to correct the wrongs of Christianity? Now, it's interesting, James, if you're listening to this. First of all, first and foremost, I have to give you some props on your comments, because your comments, and I've noticed over the months and years that you've been commenting from time to time, I cannot say this enough. You're spot on in a lot of the things, and I hate to use the word agreement, because that's not really what you're wanting, and it's not what I'm wanting to agree or disagree on anything. This is all for us just to look at and for us to think about. But I couldn't have said it better myself, to be honest, And it ties into what I was going to say about Timothy's comment, because he said, what advice would the masters give when dealing with the police? And it's interesting. You might not go, well, what that the two have with each other? I was going to actually say this, almost the same thing, that people are so caught up in the belief aspect of the Bible. You must believe in Jesus. If you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to go to hell for all eternity. And people seem to think that when you die, even if all your loved ones went to the worst possible place in the universe, hell, right, that you could somehow live in peaceful tranquility with the Lord for all eternity while your dear mother or your grandparents or your father or your cousins or your very own children were suffering moment to moment in a furnace of hell. I could not ever be able to enjoy myself, right? I can't even enjoy myself at work, or if I took off from work, if somebody else had to work a double because I took off. So I don't take off because of that, because I know what it would be. I know what it's like. I hate having to sit there and work late or work a double because somebody called out. So how would I ever be able to enjoy myself and sing, all these songs with the Lord for eternity while everybody else is suffering? Even people that I just knew in my life, I could not do it, But yet people are so, they view life so separately from one another that they could even think that they could do that. I don't know, just blows my mind. But the thing that, I get from time to time, about, people will comment and they think they're hurting my feelings, and I'll somehow find the error of my ways because they tell me that Jesus is coming back. And when Jesus comes back, he's going to smite his enemies. He's going to squash the Antichrist, and he's going to, all those who worked and believed in the Antichrist, he's going to send them to eternity, of hell and all that kind of thing. And when they use the word enemy, okay, here's the thing, okay, and this goes back to the police, because this is what I wanted to talk about, and James, you kind of beat me to the punch, is my biggest beef with Christians is they are totally hung up on the belief aspect of the Bible, and they miss all the real meat and potatoes of the teachings of the Christ. They miss it. They don't even think about it. And when they read the other parts of the Bible, they relate it back to the belief aspect of things. They always do. Every single time I've been in a church, it's always been swung back around. Even if it's a teaching that I was listening to, I was like, wow, I'm actually really understanding this and I'm learning from this. And then they swing it right back around to the belief aspect of things again. You have to believe in Jesus. You have to believe in Jesus. Be saved, be saved, be saved. Come down to the pulpit and ask for forgiveness and those kind of things. They always do it every single time. So I understand why people say these things. But if you look at the life of Jesus, did he have any enemies when he was alive? No. He was the perfect manifestation of love for the first time in human history. He was a perfect manifestation of it. Now, esoterically, they don't understand that it was actually Maitreya working through Jesus that actually that gave him that Christ-like love. It's the love nature of the Christ, actually. But Jesus himself was also a perfect manifestation of that. Whereas the Buddha, the Gautama Buddha, was a perfect manifestation of wisdom for the first time in human history, because the Buddha overshadowed him in that very, very same way. But the teachings of what Jesus was saying are far different than what people expect him to come back. So Jesus, even on the cross, even when the soldiers threw him up on the cross and, they nailed him on the cross and then they threw him up there, right? He still loved them. He did not have a single enemy. He loved them the exact same way as he loved his closest disciples. That is true love. To get to your question, Timothy, if you read the Bible about when the soldiers came to arrest him, totally unjustly, there was no crime that he committed. He wasn't a criminal. They were doing their job. Somebody ordered them to go do it. And Peter got all fed up, and what did he do? He pulled a knife out and cut one of their ears off, apparently. And then Jesus healed the guy. Even though he was one of his arresters, he healed him. And then he turned to Peter and he said, those who live by the sword shall die by the sword. A very, very important teaching that people just blow right past, right? And they go right back to the belief aspect of things. I can believe whatever, I can do whatever I want. I can be as harmful and as greedy and selfish as I possibly can be. All I have to do is ask for forgiveness from Jesus, and all my sins are admonished, right? And that's it. That's all I got to do. I don't have to worry about dealing with what I just did to this person, right? And that's where I think the major problem that people have is we do not understand the law of cause and effect, even though it's in the Bible. So even when a police officer comes to arrest somebody unjustly, the best thing to do is to be detached, to view them harmlessly. If you can, love them as much as you can, right? And that's what Jesus would have done, So that would be, I think, the advice that these masters would give any one of us when it comes to dealing with an unjust situation. And I'm going to read an article from Benjamin Crime's master about detachment. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it before I get into it. But to answer your question, James, so I'm going to swing back by to your question. I'm sorry. Who is going to correct the wrongs of Christianity? Well, of course, the process has already started. There have been people who have come out, like Alan Watts, I think is a good one. I have a link in the description. You can listen to some of the videos of his recordings talking about some of the misconceptions of Jesus and the Bible and the problems that it causes and stuff. Even some of the masters have tried to shed their light on the distortions in the Bible as much as they could. But ultimately, it has been said that the Master Jesus himself will be the one that's going to correct a lot of the wrong ways of viewing the teachings in the Bible. Now, none of these masters are going to impose their will on anybody. Not at all. So the Christian churches are going to have to ask him for help. I do think the Pope, as much flack as the popes get over, and I think a lot of them deserve it, right? I do think that Pope Francis is a little bit truer to the true teachings of Jesus. I think I've had enough history of watching him from a distance. Now, it is from a distance. I'm I'm not up close to him. I don't know him personally, where I could really say it. But my educated guess is he's closer to the teachings of Jesus than the other popes have been, especially Pope John Paul II. But Pope John Paul I, I think, was very much known for that same kind of love and that same kind of wisdom when it pertains to the Bible, right? But then you go back, historically, some of those popes were vicious, right? So I understand their criticism that gets thrown their way. But anyway, I do think that he is humble enough, at least, to step aside and ask the Master Jesus when he comes out, along with these other masters after Maitreya is introduced as Maitreya, on the day of declaration, he says who he is. He'll start to introduce these masters. I think the Master Jesus, he will ask the Master Jesus to speak to the Catholic churches. Now, will the Protestant churches come and do the same thing? They would have to do the same thing too. I think some of those churches, like the evangelical churches or the Southern Baptist Convention or something like this, they might have a harder time looking to the Master Jesus in that way. It might take them years upon years to finally open up to him and say, hey, can you help us too, right? So, there's a reason why the Master Jesus is living on the outskirts of Rome. So he doesn't have to travel too far, I guess, to talk to the people in the Vatican. But there are apparently some people in the cardinal group, the group of cardinals, that are direct disciples of the Master Jesus. So they're not saying who they are, but they know exactly who Maitreya is. They know exactly who the Master Jesus is and his future role in the Christian churches. So if at anything, if you're Catholic listening to this, as many times as humanity has gotten it wrong, at the absolute wrong time, right? It seems to be the way we do things, right? I do think that the Catholic churches did something right when they voted in Pope Francis at this time, because I do think that if Maitreya comes out soon enough and Pope Francis is Pope long enough, he is the right Pope for the right time. This is just my humble opinion about it. So anyway, but I also think even humanity itself will come along with, there'll be people who are very interested, and that's been their life work in terms of trying to shed light on the distortions in the Bible, will also help teach humanity in that way too, I think. So I wanted to read an article written by Benjamin Creme's master about detachment. And it's interesting because, I said I was going to talk about Smoke Doja's comet, but he had mentioned a name of a young Jewish kid that he thinks is Maitreya. And it's not my job to say that is him or that isn't him. So it's up for each and every one of us to decide who that person is. Or some people think Raj Batal is Maitreya. Other people have thought this person was Maitreya, or blah, 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 blah. And it's not my job to say, yes, that is him. No, that isn't him. And Benjamin Creme, made it abundantly clear to not do that. Now, he was forced to do it when Raj Batal, there was this wave of, not interest, but I guess just the paparazzi and everybody went crazy. The press went crazy trying to find who Maitreya is. I didn't realize how many people were familiar with this story enough to even find that when people came out and started thinking this guy, Raj Batal, was Maitreya, would be even interested in even trying to find if it was him or not. I mean, it was crazy. I thought there was no interest in the media about Maitreya at the time that this happened. But apparently that was wrong, right? So he was even forced to have to come out and say, Raj Batal is not Maitreya. So the Maitreya at this time will not claim to be Maitreya. So anybody that claims to be Maitreya is not Maitreya, because he is speaking to humanity. And this is what I'm saying about Smoke Doja had a problem with that, for lack of a better phrase. You know what I mean? I don't have to read what he was saying to tell you that he has a real problem, and he's not alone in people who think that Maitreya is either sinister or hiding in the shadows because of this. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with free will. We have no understanding of the law of free will. We don't know. That's why we have the lives that we live. That's why our countries have the problems that they have, because it even affects countries. Our world leaders are totally ignorant of the law of cause and effect. Jesus talked about it so simply. And swing it back to James Wambidi, it's because people are so focused on the belief aspect of Jesus. You have to believe Jesus. And then what you ask for forgiveness and everything's cool. Well, there's nothing wrong with asking for forgiveness, don't get me wrong, right? But you still have to deal with the karma that comes your way. So you can't just, pull out an AK-47 and just start shooting a bunch of people and go, you know what? My bad, I'm sorry, and have everything all cool. You still have to deal with the karmic aspect of that, right? Well, countries are the same way. The karma that our countries create come back on the country in the exact same way it will come back on an individual in that way. So when we have a better understanding of the law of cause and effect, we might not have a full understanding of that law and how to live harmlessly in that law, but when we have a better understanding of it, it will make more sense why these masters are waiting for Maitreya to finally announce himself, and why Maitreya hasn't been announcing himself as Maitreya up until the point of the day of declaration. He won't. But I wanted to read an article entitled Detachment, written by Benjamin Creme's master. The interesting thing about this is not only the simple truths of him interpreting this very famous line in the Bible and this very famous truth in the Bible, but it's also the timing of when he wrote it. He wrote it the month before September 11th, 2001. And these masters, when it comes to any evil being perpetrated on any one of us, the best thing to do is to show detachment. This is what he's talking about. And they did their best to get the message to the Bush administration at the time to not do anything. We had the sympathy of the world at the time, that right after 9/11. And had we not done what the Bush administration wanted to do with this, and eventually did do with this, we would be living in a totally different world than we are today. If you look at some of the other instances where terrorist attacks happened and they didn't do anything, guess what? They haven't had a repeat. So if you look even at India, which suffered a major terrorist attack not long after 9/11, they didn't go on this rage and this war on terror like the United States did, and they haven't had an instance since. The other thing, if you look at, I'm not a defender of Biden. I'm not a huge Biden supporter, in that way. But the way that he's dealt with somebody like Trump, I think is very much in line with what the masters would have told him if they hadn't told him to do that. To just do nothing. And eventually, the law of cause and effect will go back on that person or that group or that country. You don't have to do anything. You know what I'm saying? And this is what he talks about in this. So hopefully you'll listen to this all the way through. Like I always say before I read this, is read these articles for yourself. Go to the Share International site and read them for yourself. You can internalize what he says way better than you can from me trying to read it to you. You can also have a clear understanding of how these masters are going to teach humanity. So to answer your question, Timothy, to look at what you said, even James, and even what Smoke Doja was commenting about, this article you can really apply to each and every one of those comments and questions. So, Detachment by Benjamin Creme's master. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. There can be few, especially in the Western world, who are unfamiliar with this ancient Christian maxim. Passed down the generations from adult to child, it has found its way into the moral framework of countless millions. However, despite this long conversance, there are relatively few who appear to understand its meaning, and even fewer who live its wisdom. Essentially, it concerns detachment. The evil, the criticism, destructive gossip and actions which abounds in most so-called spiritual groups succeeds in its intent where there is no detachment. Its bitter and corrosive venom flourishes where it is given the energy of constant thought and defense. Better by far it is to leave it to the karmic law than to brood and fret against its source. This being so, it matters not the nature of the evil, the intended harm. The law is impartial and works to restore equilibrium. No manner of struggle to right a wrong or defend a reputation can better the law of karma in its task. Save then your energy for better things, and let the law decide the measure and the timing of response. When evil strikes, the best defense then is detachment. When the hunted animal stands still, silent, the hunter, baffled, goes empty-handed. When a man is detached, free from fear and the need to retaliate, he can calmly leave the great law to fight his battle for him. Thus the evil gains not, nor waxes in strength. This profound teaching of the Christ is usually expressed as an injunction against carrying injury or hurt from day to day, thus prolonging its life and further hurting the victim. This relates closely to the Christian concept of forgiveness. When a man is truly detached, he is already forgiven. He awaits patiently for the originator of the evil to realize the harm he does to himself, the victim, and the group, and to make amends. Thus is the evil blunted, and thus is it, quote, sufficient unto the day, unquote. When Maitreya, the great Lord, emerges fully and publicly, he will devote much time to the concept of detachment. Not for nothing is it central to his teaching. He has already given his thoughts on honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. Not all at first will be able to follow his thoughts, but in time his energy of love will awaken men to the practicality of his wisdom. Gradually, the old mechanical reactions of hate and envy will disappear as the social needs are met, as more and more are lifted up by the joy of working for Maitreya's cause. Thus will it be, and thus will the people of all nations grow in stature as emerging gods. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.